Once the head, hair, and toenails are removed, the carcass is broken down into manageable parts. This is what the carcass looks like hanging on the rail. Pork carcasses are typically split into halves first. The carcass is then divided into sections known as wholesale or primal. The major primal cuts are shoulder, loin, belly, and ham. Now, let's take a closer look at each primal cut. This is the whole fresh ham, which comes from the leg portion of the carcass. The ham is removed about 2 inches from the H-bone. This is a top view of the ham. Next, we have the whole untrimmed belly. The belly is removed immediately ventral to the tenderloin and 1 to 2 inches from the backbone. As you can see, the belly contains part of the ribs and breast. Next is the whole loin. This end is called the blade face end because it contains the blade bone. This is the sirloin end of the loin, and as you can see, it contains part of the hip bone. The picnic shoulder is cut from the loin between the 2nd and 3rd ribs. Next, let's cut each primal down into some of the retail cuts. Retail cuts are what you would find at the grocery store. The loin can be divided into a variety of chops and roast. These are 4 of the more common chops that come from the loin. This is a sirloin chop, porterhouse chop, ribeye chop, and blade chop. There are several roasts that are commonly cut from the loin. These are both boneless cuts, the New York roast and the tenderloin roast. From the New York roast, we can also get a New York chop. From the blade end of the loin, we can get a bone-in country-style rib, blade chop, and blade roast. From the center part, or rib portion of the loin, we can get a loin roast, ribeye chop, boneless ribeye chop, and boneless country-style ribs. The sirloin end of the loin gives us the sirloin roast, sirloin chop, and a boneless sirloin chop. The whole pork shoulder contains the hock and foot. The hock and foot are typically processed further to make things like pickled pig's feet or smoked hock. The pork shoulder is trimmed of skin and excess fat and can be further divided into 2 major roasts called the arm roast, formerly known as the picnic shoulder, and the blade roast, formerly called the Boston butt. If we take the blade roast and cut it into smaller cuts, we get a blade steak. The ham is trimmed and the hock is removed. Here is a whole trimmed ham with the hock still attached and one with the hock removed. The ham can be further divided into roast and steaks. This is a ham shank portion, ham center slice, and ham rump portion. This is the whole belly before it has been trimmed and divided into retail cuts. The belly is where we get bacon, and if we cut the rib portion of the belly off, we get spare ribs. When we remove the sternum bone, we get the popular St. Louis style ribs. These are all the ribs that come from a pork carcass. From the belly, you get the pork spare ribs and the St. Louis style ribs. From the loin, we have the back ribs, country style ribs bone in, and boneless country style ribs. As you can see, virtually every part of the carcass is used in some way. In fact, as the saying goes, we use everything but the oink. A special thanks goes to the Iowa State Meat Lab and Mr. Jeff Mitchell for the fabrication of this carcass.